I went to college there even, because Daddy was not flush, so I had to go to college right where I lived. I caught the city bus and went to college. And after I graduated, I came to the beach with my sorority and fell madly in love with this good-looking boy who became my husband in a very few months. Then came the father of my son in a few more months. Anyhow, I joined the Presbyterian Church. Well, I transferred. I've always been Presbyterian. Daddy was very big in the Presbyterian Church in Columbia. So I fell heir to it and thoroughly enjoyed it. Then when I came to Georgetown, I transferred my loyalty. The second husband and I were married in the Georgetown Presbyterian Church.
I was born September the 27th, 1918 in Ridgeway, South Carolina, and came to Georgetown in 1941 to go to work with the National Paper Company. Went into the service from here and came back in 1946. Of course, I've been a Presbyterian all my life. My father was a Methodist, my mother was a Presbyterian, and she showed him the way to go. And he didn't stand a chance, I don't think. So I've been very much involved in the Georgetown Presbyterian Church since I've been here.
Well, I didn't do much in the old church. We have that beautiful new sanctuary, which was built when I was in Charleston, I believe. I moved to Charleston for 10 years, came back, and here's this beautiful new sanctuary that you're familiar with, I'm sure. Left, there was a little T90 church on the corner of Winyaw and something. And I was married there, as I said. Then we moved to, my husband became the state editor of it was the News and Courier then. So I moved to Charleston for 10 years. He was Methodist and didn't go to church, so I thought, well, I'll just join the Methodist church with him and he will go. Ha, wrong. I joined the Methodist church and we went to church and not one soul would speak to me. I said, forget that. And I found a Presbyterian church nearby and became affiliated with that Presbyterian church, and I was happy. I think they were happy. And life went on from there. As I said, we stayed there 10 years, came back to that beautiful sanctuary we have now. And since then, I have a list of activities. I've stayed busy as I could be, got a lot of nice memories there.
Well, of course, I was a Presbyterian, born and raised in the Presbyterian Church in the little town of Ridgeway, which had about 400 people in the community. And I grew up in that church belonged to the youth organizations, and used to be the Christian Endeavor, I think. And I had 4 older sisters. I was the baby of the crowd, and they took care of me pretty well. My mother was the postmaster there, and I came to Georgetown in 1941. I went to Erskine College before that, and I came to Georgetown in 1941, I believe I've already said, and went to work with IP, and immediately joined the Presbyterian Church and got married. My wife was Ruth Ben, and her father was a Presbyterian minister over in Mississippi and Alabama and those areas, and she had spent most of her life there in those areas. Graduated from high school, I think, in some place in Georgia. And she came to Ridgeway to teach school, and so happened I happened to spot her one day, and so happened we got married in 1941. Right after Pearl Harbor, we knew that I had already tried to volunteer, and it wouldn't take me on account of my eyes. And then right after we got married, they tried to draft me, and I still couldn't. They wouldn't take me on account of my eyesight. I did go later. and served in India during the war, and for about 2 years. And but anyhow, I joined the Presbyterian Church when I came to Georgetown, and went into service and came back in 1946, I guess it was. And of course, they had at that time, all the old men were elders and ruling the church, and they wanted some young blood. So they caught us GIs coming out of the military, and I was elected a deacon pretty shortly after I came back from the service, and later became church treasurer, which I was church treasurer for about 15 years, and through all of our building program and other activities that we had. I've been an elder now since I think I was elected an elder in 1954, I believe. At that time, when you were elected an elder, it was for life. And we've changed the rules and regulations some, and decided that we didn't want elders to serve that long. So we made it a 7-year period that an elder would serve, and I think now it's been reduced, I'm not sure, to maybe 4 years, but anyhow. I went to General Assembly while I was an elder, went to the last General Assembly of the Southern Presbyterian Church in Dallas, Texas in 1960. And that was celebrating the beginning of the war between the states, and also the beginning of the Southern and Northern Presbyterian Church, because they split at the beginning of the Civil War. And I went as an elder to that one, which was a very wonderful experience. That was in the largest Presbyterian church in the United States at that time. I can't remember the name of the church, but it was in Dallas. And then I became, one time I was Sunday school superintendent. I taught Sunday school, and I was chairman of the board of deacons at one time, and anyhow, I've always been very much involved in the church. I know most of the people. I didn't know all the people that were in the church, and but now we have so many new people. I don't know many of the people when I go to church any longer. Well, there's some ministers that had impact on me, yes, several. The minister that was here when I came, Mr. Mack, who'd been here for a good many years, and then Mr. LaRue followed him, and then we had Ace Tubbs. Were you here when Ace was?
No, I didn't know him.
Ace was you probably heard of him. He was a real go-getter and real active. And when I was church treasurer, on Easter Sunday, the main thing Ace wanted us to do was to get a $1,000 collection on Easter Sunday, and we did it. And that was a lot of money back then. The church didn't have much money. You've probably seen pictures of the old church. Well, and it was in the part of town that it was built in. That was a right active area of Georgetown when it was built, because that was right where the old Atlantic Coast Lumber Company, which it was the largest lumber mill in the world, that was where all the officials and a lot of the workers lived over in that area. And so that's where the church was built. But it was getting out of date, and the neighborhood was changing, and we were getting a lot of new people coming into Georgetown, and this was after the World War II that I'm thinking about, and we were wanting to do something about our church. So Ace Tubbs was our minister, and Ace was a real live wire. And so we got things organized, and he did a great job getting things going. And we started raising money trying to raise some money, and we only had a congregation of about 300 people, I guess, somewhere along there, and none of us were rich. And we started out, at times while I was treasurer, I wasn't sure that I would be able to pay the minister salary because we didn't have enough money in the bank to take care of it, but always some way we would have enough money. As a family moved to Exchange Plantation, which is out a little northeast of Georgetown on the PD River. Beautiful old place out there. But this was Mr. and Mrs. Tom Ragsdale, and the Lord really sent him to Georgetown. Tom was in the tobacco cleaning business, I think, in Lake City. Anyhow, he was involved. Tobacco was the big thing back then, growing tobacco in this area. They were very active in our church. And he came to Georgetown just about the time that we were thinking about trying to build. And we didn't even have a place to put a church, didn't have any property. So as things went along, Tom Ragsdale bought this property where the present church is located. It was being developed. The hospital was just being built, and the area was growing. New people were buying lots and building houses. And Tom bought, I think it's 3.5 acres, if I'm not mistaken, and it was in the deed, and gave that property to the church, paid $20,000 for it, which was a steal that now was a lot of money then. And we didn't have any money, as I've said. And that's what I said, we, the church. And then I was church treasurer, and I can say that he was a very good contributor to the church too. And it was always good to see his check on the Sunday that he put it in. It was a big help. And so somewhere along the line we started doing these various projects to raise money. And we put on suppers, the women of the church did. And Miss Leela Ford, who was a pillar of this church from way back, her husband, and her father rather, was a Presbyterian minister. That's the way she came to Georgetown. And she met Mr. Ford and married him here. And she was sort of a pillar of the church, and she organized a young adult Sunday school class for all us young people coming out of the service in World War II, and got us going. That's where a lot of the elders and deacons came from, out of that young adult Sunday school class. But Miss Leela would organize these suppers that we would put on. We'd sell tickets, and everybody would donate the food. And then we would, the men organized, and people that bought tickets, we would deliver it to their homes. We'd serve like turkey dinners with dressing and all the trimmings and whatnot, and made some money that way, but it wasn't a whole heck of a lot of money. And then Tom Ragsdale, even he's out at Exchange, he was raising Black Angus cattle. And so Tom donated a young Black Angus bull that we auctioned off. And I forget how much money we got for that bull, but that made a lot of news, and people became interested in what we were trying to do. So we were getting new members, and people that were a little more, salaries were going up, and people were making better contributions to the church. And we'd put on campaigns of various sorts, and started raising money, and so we had about $5,000, as well as I recall, in the building fund. And we hired an architect, which was a great thing we did that. And that's where he drew up the original plans for the church. And I think that took most of the $5,000 that we had to pay the architect. After 2 or 3 years, we had built up, I think we had about close to $50,000 in our building fund. We had an elder who was headed up the engineer. He was the chief engineer for IP for the mill in Georgetown. His name was Bill Fortenberry. Bill and Barbara. They were great Presbyterians. Bill was on the session. And so we took the plans that the architect had drawn and decided we turned them over to Bill and see what he could do with those plans. And he came up with what pretty well is our present church. And he almost lost his job at IP. He spent so much time supervising and drawing the plans and supervising the building of the church, because once we let the contract for the church, the contract defaulted, and of course we had I forget what he called it, builder's insurance or some kind. And the insurance company had to take over and finish paying for the church. We decided we could build a church for $100,000, and so we had 50. So we decided this was very, I guess nobody would do things like this. I know the bank wouldn't get involved. We found a way to sell bonds to members of the church. And our biggest bond we had, I think, was $500, and $250 and $100, and I think that was pretty well it. So I got all the bonds and kept them at my house. And we made it, Mr. Jeter that time was manager of the South Carolina National Bank, and Ernie Kuhn was the assistant manager, both of them members of our church. We made a deal with them at the bank that a member of the church would come to the bank and buy a bond, $250 or whatever. The bank would put that money into our account, and then Ernie would call me, or Mr. Jeter would call me every day at my office at the mill before I went to lunch. And they would say, we sold this many bonds to give me their names. So I'd go home at lunch, fill out the bond, sign the bond, take it back, and leave it at the bank, or I'd go back after lunch, go back to the mill. I'd stop by the bank and leave the bonds, and they weren't worth 2 cents, but the bank held on to them. And then they put that money in our bank account. And that's the way we started building the bank account. And we had to agree to put, I think it was $223 each Sunday, out of each Sunday's collection. The first 200, I don't know how we got $223, but I remember that. We had to put $223 and transfer it out of our collection and give it to the bank every Sunday. I had to take, back then, you didn't have a night depository. I had to take that money bag home, scared my wife to death. I'd take that money bag home every Sunday, and Sunday afternoon I'd spend counting the money. And the Sunday school would give children to give a lot of money. It took that forever to count all those pennies and everything. But anyhow, and on Monday morning, I would go down, take the money bag to work with me, and lock it up in the car, and go out and slip off from work for a little bit and go down to the bank and make the deposit until they finally got where you could drop it in and get a night deposit where you could drop it. So that helped when they finally got that. So that way we raised up. We got the $100,000 finally, and we let the contract. And as I have already said, the contractor got started real good and defaulted. And the insurance company had to take over. And that's when it all fell on Bill Fortenberry, who was trying to do his job at the mill and trying to do his job for the church. And that's the way we got our, and that church was well built because Bill watched those contractors like a hawk, and it was well done. And so we got a good foundation and everything in that church. Our minister, Ace Tubbs, he got a call to go to a church in Yonkers, New York, and he left. And Mr. Carmichael came, and he was just the opposite from Ace, and he was what we needed. He helped us. We would never have gotten all the nice pews and pulpit furniture and things that we had, and the colors that we had, if it hadn't been for Mr. Carmichael. He was pretty good at all of that, and made us do these things. We'd say we don't have any money. He said, we'll get that money, and we'd get to work in some way. We would raise the money the pews. I remember the pews we were going to get. They weren't very pretty, but we said, well, we can afford them. He said, we don't want those pews, and we raised enough money to get the good, nice-looking pews that we have now, and things like that.
He kept talking about the elders, and I was the first female elder. And I think I was the only one after the election. Here I go, cried all the way home. Well, I was overcome that they would elect a female. And such an honor, you know, and I thank God over and over, and worked real hard to live up to his standards. And I think I have, I hope so anyhow. I was even the clerk of session for a while, 1 or 2 years, I don't remember. But this is an aside. Pete Brown was a following minister later, and he left our church to go to Wilmington.
Rocky Mount.
Rocky Mount. And before he left, he appointed me and Herbert McDaniel and Johnny Weaver to run the church. Now, girls and boys, and that was some experience. Thank God they just left us for 3 months. No telling what would happen to the church. But they quickly got an interim minister in there. Wesley, do you know that? Did you know that?
Yeah.
He knows everything. But anyhow, it was fun for a while. It lasted. I also was the first moderator from our church of a presbytery, which was absolutely pitiful. I had no clue what I was doing, none. And one of the ministers, Bobby Wilkes, came up to me afterwards and he said, you know, you almost gave my church away, Mildred. You came so close to it. And I was mortified. As I said, I did not know what I was doing, but I was put up to the job, and I tried. So don't ever take on a job you don't feel you can do, because maybe you can't. Another little thing, I helped Pete Brown teach a year's Bible course on Kerygma, which is we cover the whole Bible in 1 year, studying its concepts. Then we asked all the elders in the church to visit with us. We had I can't remember the name, and I had it this morning. We visited the neighborhood of Willowbank. We wanted all the people that were non-churched to let them know we had a church that would welcome them. One elder showed up to join us. Would you guess who it was? Hugh Reed.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised.
Good old Hugh Reed.
Not surprised.
Now that was a pillar of the session, I know, and of the church. He taught me so much, because if I boo-booed, he let me know. And that was the only way to learn, really and truly. Another thing I'm really pleased with, going back to Pete Brown, he showed me a list one time of all these young adults. By then, Wesley, they were the children of your young adults, who had children in Sunday school, but they didn't have a class. They didn't go to Sunday school. He said, see what you can do with this. So I wrote each one of them a little note and invited them to come to my Sunday school class. And the response was terrific. And we called it the CCE class, a Continuing Christian Education class, which is going on today. I also started a night circle for the working girls. They didn't have any place to go at night for their circle, get together and study the Bible and fellowship mainly. So they would come on Monday night in my home, and we sat around, and I thought it was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Once a month, like the big circles did. I was head of the Christian Education Committee one time, and you know, when you live in a church for 60, 70 years, you get to do all sorts of fun things. This was the Christian Education Committee because I taught school so long. We were converting something, I can't remember why, Wesley might remember. There was a broom closet right across the hall from the nursery. So we cleaned out the broom closet and bought a little Johnny, a little toilet that was about this high from the floor, so our little babies could use it. They thought they were grown, you know, it was wonderful. And so that was a fun thing to do. I served on Jody Tamsberg's big capital fund campaign when we built our day school. Too many in the session did not want us to operate a day school. It would destroy the rest of the building, and you can just imagine what all they said about it. They didn't want it in the present rooms that we occupied because the children would write on the walls or scuff the floor. Could not have it on second floor. It was against the fire prevention code. So we decided we'd build our own. So we just pushed back the central part of our present building and I have no idea how many rooms are back there, but it's 7 or 8. And that has gone really well. And all I did was ask for money, and I hate to ask for money, but it worked. And I think my final glory, I followed Wesley as a trustee. I don't know when you came off.
I have no idea.
They don't tell you.
No, every time I turned around, of course we didn't do anything. The trustees didn't do anything.
No.
But anyhow, we had to have them.
And I called Steve and I said, well, when do the trustees meet? Mildred, they don't meet.
We never did have to borrow any money.
Yeah, I was
crushed. I had to sign, we did borrow some money.
I thought we would have.
We had 3 trustees, and we all 3 had to sign for it.
There was money floating around, well, not really floating, but there was money left from Ralph Ford's will, and he was our organist for a long time. And good old Walter Brown, who was our Sunday school treasurer
for a long
church
time.
Treasurer for a long time.
Followed me.
And my husband, well, I sort of dipped into that. And we built the chapel. So the chapel is a beautiful, beautiful added room to our present building. They didn't have to start from scratch. The architect, Mark somebody, brilliant young architect. You know Mark's last name?
I didn't know the architect. I wasn't involved. I wasn't involved in that building. That fund. I was too old for that.
You're never too old, Wesley. I met him when we dedicated the chapel. That was the first and only time I have met him. But he was very proud of the way it turned out. They knocked out a floor up in the ceiling to let the spires, you know, we had the arched spires up there, not spires.
If I can interrupt you a minute on that chapel, the original plans, we were going to have a chapel, a big chapel, extending out from the church. And that's the reason that we moved that stained glass window from the old church and put where it is. And the reason it had to be turned around because that was to be at the back of the church. And if we built the new chapel. But we finally decided, as Mildred had said, not to build that big chapel that we had the plans for and included in this later building program that we had.
Well, boy, Bill Puckett loves it. Loves it. He says they have more wonderful little services in there, such as on Easter and Thanksgiving services when there's not going to be a huge crowd. It'll seat 40 or 50, I think, comfortably.
I think 50.
So I've had some marvelous, marvelous the Lord has been so blessed, has blessed me so much in that church. And all the good people I know and the people I love. And Wesley, you didn't touch on it, and I did either. But our church started Habitat for Humanity. Jim Spangenberg brought that idea with him. And we have built, I don't know how many houses, but they tore down the old jail. It was over there on
Merriman Road.
Merriman Road. I think we bought that property.
We did.
Good. And it's a semicircle where they have put in some of the houses and more destined to be built there. They also bought property on over here on the neck, right near Waccamaw Elementary School, and they have houses there. Helping Hands, we had a lot to do with that. We did not start it. That was going on early, but you remember Susan Thomas and her speeches about Helping Hands. The last Sunday in the month, bring your donations for Helping Hands. When she left and moved out of the area, I thought, oh goodness, but we're still helping with Helping Hands. I think our church leads this area in a lot of youth activities. They have meetings and groups that are sponsored by our people. And we do have our mission projects. Cody Watson, who works for the church, has been visiting in our church many times and telling us about the mission work around the church. I like that. It keeps us connected with what's happening in the world. The women award a lifetime membership once a year, and the money goes for some good purpose, which I have forgotten. But that is quite an honor, and our circles do all sorts of things. They have their little activities plus Bible study. The perennials, you'd never guess who they are. They keep going and going and going, you know, like the rabbit. They are active now. Our choirs have, under Tom's leadership, really have done some extensive work in the community and help with so much. And we also we sponsor blood drives. Our church is a leader, and I like to say I'm a part of it.
I think she ought to be mentioned. Mrs. O.L. Brewerton was a good member of that church. And her husband was a medical doctor in Georgetown, Dr. Brewerton, and he owned property around. And there was a house on the corner, St. James, but she had a house on that property. So that's when we were, the manse was a terrible looking old home. It was run down and it was right behind the old church. And we wanted to build a new manse. That was before we ever built the new church. Ms. Brewerton gave that property to the church. So we tore the house down, and I think, well, anyhow, we moved it and got rid of it. It was a funny looking house. I guess you didn't ever see it. And that's where we built the manse. And that cost us $26,000 to build that manse. And there was a member of our church by the name of Jim Lawton, and he wouldn't come to church. His wife was a good church member, but Mr. Lawton, he gave and was interested, and he became chairman of the building committee. And I was church treasurer at that time, and we were trying to raise the money. We forgot we had to borrow it from. We went down to Mr. Beatty. Had an insurance and real estate business in Georgetown, and the insurance company would lend money. So nobody else would lend us any money because they didn't think Presbyterians ate too much. So we went down, and Mr. Beatty had faith in us and signed us up with an insurance company, and we would pay, I think it was $4,000 a year to pay off the loan of $26,000. And you know, the money, and we put our new minister in that manse, and people started coming to church and giving, And we paid that loan off in a short time, didn't take too long. The main, something else that's kind of interesting. We put this new minister in there, Ace Tubbs. He was young, he'd been up in Walhalla, and we called him from Walhalla. And he came there, I think he had one child, can't remember the name. But anyhow, while he was there, I think 4 of his children were born in that manse. So when Ace left, and Mr. Carmichael came, he had 2 children, he already had 2 children. Then Mr. Carmichael left. And after Mr. Carmichael, Bobby Wilkes came. And he had Jamie, that was his only child. And the rest of his children, I guess either 3 or 4 of his children were born in that manse. So I always thought that was right interesting.
And then Pete Brown came along, and he had 2.
Pete had 2 right there, sure did. Right.
I had never thought about that connection.
So
prolific.
Old Pete was a bird hunter, you know.
Oh yeah, he took Bob out west one time.
When they said, "Do you think we ought to hire him?" I said, "Any man that's a bird hunter, he's a good man." So we all decided to hire Pete. But I'd like to mention Mildred's, if you get you a little personal there, but her husband was a very good, he was a Methodist, wasn't he?
Bob.
And Elliot Quattlebaum talked him, I think, into changing to become a Presbyterian. And Bob was a good contributor to that church, to our Presbyterian church, and was a good worker, along with his wife.
When we had our bicentennial, this was given to those who participated. And Tom Gillespie and I represented Georgetown Presbyterian. So a few months later, after it was over, and we met our goal, I got that in the mail. I was thrilled to pieces. I didn't know they gave gifts. Usually they want the money.
Georgetown hasn't changed a whole lot, really. The area over here, where we are now, this is the area that has really changed. There wasn't anything over here. And I guess what was a lifesaver for this area over here was when Mr. Huntington and Mr. and Mrs. Huntington built Brook Green Gardens. They put a lot of the people to work that lived over, the black people that lived over here. They were practically starving to death, so I've been told, because there wasn't any way for them to make any money. The old Atlantic Coast Lumber Company mill had closed down, and there wasn't any place for these people to work except a little bit of work they could do on plantations, and a lot of them, I think, just fished and caught oysters and things like that. That's the way they lived.
Well, Bob said he, excuse me, he used to come here. He lived in Florence on dirt roads, and he well remembered when they paved them all the way from Florence to Myrtle Beach, and there was no Ocean Drive Hotel. Y'all don't remember, you're too young. You remember.
Oh, I remember the Ocean Forest.
Ocean Forest, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I would look around. It's hard to believe you'd come that far on a dirt road, but you have to have your progress, you know, as it appears, as it comes along. 'Cause I came here seeing 43. It was here, I mean, Georgetown was here. Coming from Columbia, I thought it was right rinky-dink, but anyhow. Few houses, you know, few the beach. We came, Daddy used to bring us to Pawleys Beach, the island really, for summer vacations. So I didn't know where it was. I didn't know what it was about. And we thought it was marvelous, you know, wonderful place to go. So when I found out I was going to live in Georgetown, I was thrilled to pieces. And as Wesley said, buildings are going up, going up, going up. There's a new bank going up on our road, and they're just 4 right within the same block already there, so they have to put the 5th one. They must think we are wealthy. I taught mostly in Maryville. Well, really around, I started at Georgetown High School, teaching Latin and English. And when you got pregnant, you retired, period. And I found they caught me going outside being sick. So they said, Mrs. McDonald, you have to retire. It broke my heart. I wasn't ready to retire. And so I had my little boy, and then the second one was coming around. Same thing happened, retire. They didn't say take a leave of absence. So I had him, and then we moved to Charleston, and I thought surely things would be a little bit lighter. No, not at all. The thing that got me was when they let me go back to work, the principal got up and announced, "We welcome Mrs. McDonald back after her year's rest." I thought, you have a baby, sir, and see if you call it rest. But anyhow, I loved the classroom. It's just wonderful. In the last 5 years, I was assistant principal, so then I could wield the heavy stick, you know.
And we should mention Alec and Lou Quattlebaum.
Yes.
Alec was a great member because he was already a Presbyterian. They lived in Florence, and they moved and bought Arundel Plantation, yeah. So and Lou, some of her artwork still, I think right by the elevator there at the church now. But they were great members of the church, and Alec was a good worker and a good contributor.